Hello, and welcome to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. I'm Juliet the daughter.
That must make me the dad.
I would
Kevin.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah. And today's album... All right, remain calm. Today's album that Juliet picked was kind of by accident because she thought a particular song was on it and found out it wasn't, but she decided to commit herself and said, we're going to do this album.
And now I wish I picked the other one.
And today's album is...
London Calling.
By...
The Clash.
Okay, so quick history of The Clash. Joe Strummer, born John Mellor, was in the pub rock band called the 101ers. And after seeing the Sex Pistols in concert, he wanted in on punk.
Cool.
Supposedly, he met Mick Jones in a Dole line, which is an unemployment line, not a Dole pineapple line.
I was about to say, were they getting pineapple at the grocery store?
Nah. Jones had a band called the London SS, which had bassist Paul Simonon and guitarist Keith Levine, who would leave in a few months to form Public Image Limited with Johnny Rotten. Terry Chimes, also known as Tory Crimes, best punk name ever.
I love that, especially with the Tories in England.
Joined on the drums. Simonon came up with the name of The Clash from seeing the word frequently in newspapers. They wound up opening for the Pistols on their Anarchy tour, which only lasted 3 shows.
Ooh, why?
But I imagine the usual Pistols chaos.
Okay.
It was enough, though, to raise the Clash's profile to get them signed to British CBS. They made their debut album in 3 weekends. Once they finished recording, Chimes left and Nicky Topper-Hedden became the drummer. The debut album was released in 1977. Their American label, Epic, though, thought it was too crude to release in the U.S. So it wound up becoming the best-selling import album of all time. And eventually it did get released in the U.S., but in 1979, 2 years later, but with a few different songs. Their second album was Give 'Em Enough Rope, which was produced by Sandy Perlman from Blue Oyster Cult. To give the band a cleaner sound, it did better in England than in the U.S. Then came London Calling, then Sandinista, a 3-record behemoth that did better in the U.S. than in the U.K.
Really? Why? Were they appealing to... Did they write more stuff for American audiences in that one?
No,
or?
they were just still doing their thing, but for some reason it did better in the U.S. Their 5th album was Combat Rock, and after it was recorded, Topper-Hedden left, but it was later revealed that he was kicked out due to his heroin habit.
Oh, shit. Is he still alive? Or
Yep.
Okay.
Terry Chimes filled the drummer's chair once again. Combat Rock was their biggest-selling album and had the hits Rock the Casbah and Should I Stay or Should I Go? And
Should I Stay or Should I Go? Okay.
The Clash wound up being the opening act for The Who's Farewell Tour.
Oh, that's cool.
Their first farewell tour in 1982.
How many farewell tours have The Who had?
Way too many. And a lot of the times they would end up getting booed by the audience.
Oh, no, why?
Because I think they were just so different from The Who. I mean, it's classic rock and you've got something completely different from that.
Oh, well, I don't know. It makes sense in my mind.
And, of course, at the height of their success, they fell apart. Chimes was fired, and eventually Mick Jones was too because he drifted apart from the original ideas of The Clash. Later on, Joe Strummer would say that it was more his manager's idea to fire Mick than his. And he was also told, the manager told him, hey, Joe, you're the real star of the band.
Uh-oh.
Joe regretted the decision. Strummer and Simonon, though, did hire 3 other guys, released Cut the Crap, and then broke up.
Oh, no.
There would be talks of a reunion, but nothing ever came off. The closest they ever got was when they were to be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they decided, yeah, you know, the bands usually play together, we should play together.
Cool. But
Strummer died of a heart defect a few months before the induction.
Oh.
So The Clash, the only band that matters, as their label called them, even though their label kind of treated them like crap.
Was that you referring to Epic or the label they had in the UK?
Epic.
Okay.
And my sad Clash story is that Mike had asked me if I wanted to go with him and Dave to see them live once. And I said, nah, some other time.
No! Oh, shit!
Which was stupid.
Yes, very stupid.
But at the time, it was like, I came late to the party. I tend to do this with a lot of bands where it's like, I hear these bands everyone's raving about, and I usually don't come around to them till years later. I don't know if it's like subconsciously I'm not believing the hype or what. But it was one of those things like, oh my God, these guys were great. Oh, I can't believe I didn't go. Stupid.
That was me when I got into David Bowie. I'm like, why wasn't I a fan when he was alive? Why did it take him dying for me to find out about him?
Okay, now for the background of the album itself.
Also Panic at the Disco. That's another one for me. Anyway, continue.
Okay, so this was the third Clash album, a 2-record set, but it was only 65 minutes long. And there's a process called groove cramming, which makes the LP grooves thinner to allow material of that long to fit on one LP. But the band seemed to have gone for sound quality instead. And they had 19 songs, you know? And so what they did was, I think at the time, they kept the cost of the double album at the 1 LP rate, which I think was like $7.98 back then. So it was kind of sort of like, buy one record, get one free. So Joe Strummer and Mick Jones, who I believe are the Lennon and McCartney of punk.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. You went there. You did it.
I'm going to keep going back to that. I'm going to keep going back to that well, baby.
Okay.
They were going through writer's block at the time. And in the studio, they played a lot of covers, and they tried different musical styles, rockabilly, punk, rock and roll, R&B, and reggae. They'd been moving beyond punk since their second album, Give Enough Rope. And I think they realized that they had to grow musically. Playing just punk is only going to take you so far. I mean, look at the Ramones. Great band, love them, but if they had stopped after their fourth album, would not have been a problem.
Maybe I should have picked the Ramones instead.
But they were just in that one, I don't want to call it a rut. It eventually became a rut, and they just could never get out of it.
Damn it, Dad, I wanted punk.
Anyway, the Clash kept their rehearsals private.
Really? Like, define private?
Well,
nobody allowed inside?
No hangers-on, no friends, whatever. They just wanted to expand on their musical palette, and they didn't want, I guess they were afraid people were going to say, oh, that's not you, what do you think you're doing?
Or maybe someone would try to steal it?
No, I think it was just that they were just moving beyond the punk sound, and they just did not want to hear it from anyone. But they stuck to an extremely disciplined daily routine. They'd rehearse in the afternoon, play a late afternoon soccer game, go to the local pub, and then have an evening rehearsal. They got their musical and songwriting confidence back, and they also realized that Topper Headon was a damn good drummer, and his playing allowed them to branch out a lot more, because he had a jazz background.
Oh, cool, okay.
And he has a great hi-hat style, which you can hear on Lost in the Supermarket, Clamp Down, and especially Train in Vain, which we will get to. Guy Stevens produced, and they started in August 79 and took 5 to 6 weeks of 18-hour days. London Calling came out in England in December 1979 and was released in the United States in January of 1980. Now, it went gold in December of 1991.
Wait, why did it take that long?
It just happens with some bands and some albums.
That's weird.
Well, I know the Pistols, it took them, oh my God, I don't want to say decades, but it took them a damn long time just to go gold for their only album. So gold is...
Wait, their only album?
Yeah.
Why do they only have one?
They were just too combustible.
Oh.
So gold is 500,000 albums. Now here's the thing. It only took an additional 5 years in February 1996 for them to go platinum, 1 million copies.
Nice.
So this album has been on countless Best Rock Album Ever lists and was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2007. Now as for the cover...
Yeah, I've seen the cover. He's like bent over on stage or something. What's he doing? Like, it was a bit blurry when I was looking at the image on Spotify.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned the blurry. Okay, Penny Smith, who kind of seemed to be the band's official photographer, she took the photo of Paul Simon smashing his bass at the Palladium in New York City when he found out that the bouncers wouldn't let the audience stand up out of their seats.
Why? Was there a safety concern or something?
Could be. I don't know. I really don't know. Smith thought the shot was out of focus and that it would make it wasn't one of her best pictures, but Joe Strummer thought it would make a great cover. The font used for the words London Calling was the same used for Elvis Presley's debut album.
Sweet.
In 2010, it was one of 10 covers that the Royal Mail chose for its classic album cover postage stamps.
Nice.
And London Calling also makes it on a lot of best album cover of all time list.
Now, what were some of the other stamps?
Oh, they were all British albums. They were with one that was some sort of Coldplay album. I actually looked it up on the website. Unfortunately, I can't really remember the other ones. I think one of them was was either a Pulp album or a Blur album. The only one that really stood out to me was the London Calling one. I mean, that's just a great cover. But I guess in England, these other album covers must be a big deal.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get to the songs, shall we? Would you like to go first?
Yes, let's do it. All
You'll
right.
be the point. I probably will be the counterpoint. Go ahead.
Yes, okay. London Calling. This is one of... So, there's 19 songs on this album, right?
Yes.
I only like 3.
Okay.
And the first one is one of them. So, London Calling. The opening instruments hook you in with the cymbals of the drums and that bass solo because it shows that this band, they know how to layer the sound one hook at a time. I was pleasantly surprised by the vocal harmonies and how resonant they were, and for some reason the echo that they put on them with the harmonies reminded me of the echo in Hell's Bells by AC/DC with the bells tolling, which I thought was kind of cool because it sounded just that resonant. You can tell that these singers are very British, but they're not posh British. British in the sense that you could see them as the Cockney ne'er-do-wells in a Charles Dickens novel. The message of the song is, it's a new era in London, rock is out with, phony Beatlemania, and punk is in. I guess I'm surprised by how gritty they sound with their voices, but also how polished they sound with their instruments at the same time, so they're not too hardcore. This is a song I would love to play on the plane ride to London because I'm planning on going to London next summer. So I would love to play this as we're landing in England. But my one question is, has anyone deciphered the Morse code at the end? Because I think it's Morse code. What's it say?
SOS.
Okay, yeah, I kind of had a feeling.
Okay, I love how this opens the album. The drums and guitars are just pounding away together like a marching beat through the whole thing. And then Joe Strummer comes in and broadcasts to the world what's going on, and he broadcasts hard.
Yeah.
Because lyrically, there's a lot going on in this song. There's a reference to the 3 Mile Island disaster in Pennsylvania about the nuclear era, and police brutality with "We ain't got no swing except for the ring of that truncheon thing." The drug use. But we ain't got no high except for the one with the yellowy eyes.
Oof.
And then he actually talks about, London actually drowning if the Thames overflowed because everyone lives on the river.
Was that a concern at the time or something?
I guess it was to him, but this was before the Thames Barrier was built in 1982.
Oh, okay.
Because he does sing, "London is drowning and I live by the river." And the line about phony Beatlemania, that was more a reference to the bust of the punk boom from 1977 because everyone thought, wow, this is the next big thing. And he's telling, people out there, don't look to us. Phony Beatlemania has bitten the dust because people kind of tried to equate the punk boom to Beatlemania.
No, those two are different things.
Well, it's not the music so much as it's going to be this big thing in England. And it was for about 3 seconds. Because they thought, it's going to take over the world, and it had a tough time in the United States. I mean, the United States version of punk and the British version of punk were kind of almost two different things. I mean, the closest,
I can get that.
the closest that the U.S. came to, I think, would again be the Ramones.
Well, I don't know, I like the idea of British punk, with their stand up and fight against the man, because I guess in Britain, class struggles are a subject that's way more touchy than it is over here. So that's kind of an interesting idea for a punk band to deal with. But I think that punk bands in the United States, they go a lot more hardcore. I think if the Clash was an American band, right, and London Calling was their album, it would have been, the rest of those 18 songs would have been that first song. You get what I mean?
Kind of.
Yeah. Also,
well, one thing that you mentioned about the singing, I'm sure Joe didn't take singing lessons, but he sounds
cool.
He sounds a lot more clearer than on their debut, where it was more yelling / singing / talking. Where this one, he's a little more tuneful, as tuneful as Joe Strummer ever was going to get.
Also, the music video for this, I looked it up when I wanted to listen to it one day. It's actually really cool because they're standing there with their messy black hair, black leather trench coats, and they're standing on a boat rocking out at 3 o'clock in the morning on the Thames. And I was just this is kind of cool and also the way it was filmed, I don't know what type of lens they used on the camera, but it made it seem really gritty and fuzzy. So that was cool. All right, Brand New Cadillac. Now this is interesting, because while The Clash claims to be done with 40 Beatlemania, which now I know what you're referring to, this song sounds like it could have been written in the 1950s by a rock and roll group that was kind of on the fritz and trying to be ahead of their time. The opening guitar lick that runs through the entire song is very similar. I don't know why, but it reminded me of the guitar lick in the James Bond theme. I love how this song is a girl leaving her boyfriend and doing it while making him jealous of her brand new car. Like, you don't get the Cadillac, and you don't get me. Catchy song with an interesting sound from a punk band, but I like London Calling better. But is the phrase balls to you a British expression? Because I don't believe I've ever heard someone say that in America.
Yeah, okay. It's funny you should mention... about it being a song from the 50s, because this is a cover song that was written in 1959 by Vince Taylor, who was the inspiration for Bowie's Ziggy Stardust.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
And then listening to this song recently, after all these years, it hit me. The way Joe sings it, he's going through the 5 stages of grief. Really.
Yeah.
First is the denial, or more like disbelief about his baby driving up in that caddy. Like, this cannot be happening.
Yeah, she can't be driving a car like this.
And then anger. I mean, it's just in his voice.
You bitch!
And then he's bargaining like, baby, won't you hear my plea? Come on, sugar.
Come on.
And then depression because he's not having the best day here, especially it's like, you said,
son of a
balls,
bitch.
balls to you, daddy.
Yeah.
And then finally acceptance. She ain't never coming back. And you can dance to it. And I love that. Doom, 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 doom.
Yeah, that guitar lick.
And it kind of reminds me of the Batman TV show for some reason.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah. But I love that song.
Okay, Jimmy Jazz. This song was surprisingly mellow, and I was not expecting that acoustic guitar. The saxophone made more sense because, jazz is in the title, which I appreciate, but I don't think of jazz or mellow when I think of The Clash. I feel like it's the only time they're making fun of this type of music is when the lead singer spells out jazz like he's scat singing. And scat singing is not something I'm a fan of if it's overdone, but it can work when appropriate. Even though it told the tale of the police looking out for a crook, too bland for my taste.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the one thing that you have to remember with the way that Jimmy Jazz sounds is that The Clash... Like I said, they were moving away from the punk sound. They really wanted to broaden their horizons musically. And this is their White Album. It just
where they're just like throwing darts and seeing what sticks?
Well, not so much as that, but just, mining different musical styles. And
the White Album's better.
And I always thought that this was like their take on the Stagger Lee myth, where... from the look on your face, you have no idea.
No.
Stagger Lee was drinking with Bill Lyons in the bar. They got in an argument, and Stag shot Billy and took his hat. And this was an incident that really happened back in the 1890s.
Oh,
but then,
wait, I think I've heard of this, but keep going.
But like all this folklore got built around it, various variations on the legend. It kind of got turned into a legend. There's been so many songs about it. The biggest hit version being by Lloyd Price, which I think came out late 50s, early 60s. But to me, it's like, this is more extreme because I look at it as like Jimmy Jazz cuts off Jimmy Dread's ears and head.
Ugh.
And Joe's just a bystander when the cops come. He ain't here. He went
I
went
know,
past.
man. I know nothing.
Yeah, and I think Punk's jaws must have hit the floor with the Irish horns in the background and Topper Hedden swinging on the drums, man. And when Joe sings the words Sadamasagana, that means give praise in Amharic, in Ethiopian Semitic language.
Okay.
And that's also a song in an album by the roots reggae band the Abyssinians. And yeah, I had to look all that up. And yeah, I love Joe scatting at the end. I've noticed one thing, like listening to this and other albums, he does like a lot of impromptu stuff vocally, or just asides. He'll just like throw in these little bits here and there.
That's cool.
And it's hilarious at the end. And he's doing his scatting, and then he just says, and then it sucks.
Well, again, like you could tell that, like just by him yelling that, they're making fun of it. Well, I know, but you get what I mean.
I think they're more having fun with it than making fun of it.
Okay. Hateful. So, is the guy who gives him what he wants a mob boss, a drug dealer, or both? It's kept ambiguous, so maybe we'll never know.
A drug dealer.
Drug dealer? Okay. The song is okay, and some of the guitar parts sound very similar to other songs, but I can't think of what. Like, the guitar part was like, I've heard this before, but it's not from this song. It's from somewhere else. Like, the guitar parts where the notes keep going higher and higher reminds you of Creeping Up the Backstairs by the Fratellis. And there was another part that I think reminded me of this is going to date me a little bit. It reminds me of the Jim Rome theme song from his radio show.
Well, that's Iggy Pop.
Was that the
Lust for Life?
Lust for Life. Thank you.
Yeah.
The song is chaotic, but it's okay.
Well, it probably should be chaotic because it's it's kind of their version of the Velvet Underground's "Waiting for the Man," except you can dance to it. It's the same thing, Anything I want, he gives it to me. Anything I want, he gives it, but not for free. So basically, he's just talking about his dealer, and he's waiting to get his next hit, and he's like, oh, I'm so hateful. I don't know if it's like a self-loathing.
Yeah, does he hate himself or?
It could be, and I'm so grateful to be nowhere. Like he's just like strung out on the whole thing. But yeah, and just the way that it's doom 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 doom. I mean, it's almost like a Bo Diddley type of beat, but a little more sped up.
I love Bo Diddley, man.
And just just a great song.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Nothing but greatness so far.
In your mind.
I am correct as usual.
Okay, King Friday.
Next song.
Rudy Can't Fail. This song is better than the previous two. That rhythmic hook is definitely one that I've heard before, and I feel like a lot of other songs have copied it. I think I heard that hook maybe in a film soundtrack as well. It's easily the best part of the song, but other than that, it's okay. I don't remember too much of this. I was sitting in a cafe listening to this album, and it all just kind of bled together. Also, who's Rudy? Do we know?
Yes, we do.
Okay, who is it?
I'm going to give you some background. Are you finished with your spiel?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is a conversation between Rude Boys and their elders. Now, I had to do some research on the background of Rude Boys. The Rude Boy subculture arose from the poorer sections of Kingston, Jamaica, and was associated with violent, discontented youths. And along with ska and rocksteady music, many Rude Boys favored sharp suits, thin ties, and pork pie or trilby hats, showing an influence of the fashions of American jazz musicians and soul music artists. And the other thing that was also popular was American cowboy and gangster outlaw films that shaped the Rude Boy image. And in that period of time, unemployed Jamaican youth sometimes found temporary employment from sound system operators to disrupt competitors' dances, leading to the term dance hall crashers. And the violence that sometimes occurred at the dances and its association with the Rude Boy lifestyle gave rise to a slew of releases by artists to address the Rude Boys directly with lyrics that either promoted or rejected the Rude Boy violence.
Okay.
And starting in the 1970s, Jamaican reggae replaced the ska and rocksteady music associated with the Rude Boys. In the 1980s, dancehall became the main Jamaican popular music genre, drawing some parallels with the early Rude Boys in its culture and local content. And Rude Boy was also my nickname that Bernard gave me when we worked together at Whole Foods.
Oh, I love Bernard. I miss him.
And again, it's another style that's not punk. It's almost, dare I say, pop.
I don't remember this song too well, so...
Well, this could have been a hit. I mean, I just like it, and I like the back and forth between, the elders about, you being rude and reckless, and you're drinking beer for breakfast, and, the Rude Boys going back. What do you expect from us? It's what we do.
All right. My second favorite song on this whole album, Spanish Bombs.
Really?
Yes! It's a great song where you learn something new. Now, I did a bit of research on my own, so I found out this song is about the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939 after a military coup failed to overthrow the government, and Spain was divided between the nationalists, who were supported by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, and the Republicans, who were supported by the U.S. and the USSR, along with some volunteers from Europe. Now, what I want to know is, why the Clash wrote this song. Does one of them have relatives in Spain? Are they history nerds? But this song is so much fun, and the Spanish Bombs, Spanish songs is so catchy, and I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
I think also there were, I want to say around the time that they came out with the song, I believe there were some attacks in Spain.
After the song came out?
I think before.
Okay.
Before. I guess it's the Basques in Spain. Yeah, I did some research too. Apparently, you did more than I did. But I look at it as like a history lesson you can dance to, And per Joe, the lyric, some of the lyric is Clash Spanish, where they start singing in Spanish.
Yeah.
And he says it means, I love you and goodbye, I want you, but oh, my aching heart, induced by those grapes of wrath.
Ooh,
Yeah.
poetic.
Well, another thing that I read was that this is supposed to, like, contrast the Spanish Civil War with modern British tourists touring Spain. And... yeah, I know. I don't know if it's like, well, they're seeing these places and they have no idea what happened, back in the 30s.
It's probably a British thing we just don't understand.
Um,
Like, you know what I mean?
Could be.
Because I don't know too much about it.
And all I know is the other thing was, like, the Nationalists did win, and so Generalissimo
no.
Francisco Franco was in power
Great.
until, I believe, 1975, so 36 years. Then he died, and then he became, like, a recurring comedic reference on Saturday Night Live whenever they did Weekend Update. This just in, Generalissimo Francisco Franco is still dead.
That's probably still on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure you could find it.
I'll find it in the archives. Let's do some digging. Okay, The Right Profile. Another song where you learn something new, but not sure if it's another great one. So I did some research again. Montgomery Clift was an actor who had been known for playing broody young men in Hitchcock films and began what Wikipedia called the longest suicide in history.
Yes.
After he never recovered from a devastating car crash. It's a very sad song about the fall of a Hollywood star and how everyone watches their fall from grace with intrusive fascination. Like, you can get why they're fascinated, but it's like, leave the guy alone, he's suffering. It's bleak and informative, but not my favorite.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, this is about Montgomery Clift's car accident. And what happened was in May of 1956, he fell asleep at the wheel, smashing his car into a telephone pole after leaving a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's.
God damn it, Elizabeth Taylor.
Well, no, alerted by a witness, listen to this. Liz rushed to the scene and saved Clift's life
Oh, good for you.
by pulling a tooth out of his tongue as he was choking on it.
Ugh. Oh my god.
That's impressive.
No, that is impressive. Good for her for not, like, chickening out or anything when she saw him.
Yeah.
Most people would.
So he ended up having plastic surgery, among other things, and was back at work 2 months later. He worked for 10 more years and actually scored an Oscar nom for Best Supporting Actor for Judgment at Nuremberg.
Oh, cool.
And the problem was, like, he kept forgetting his lines. He just had this one scene.
Probably brain
And
damage.
the director told him, just go with what you feel. This is what's happening to your character. You look at Spencer Tracy and you just speak. And, he just came out with this stuff and got the Oscar nom. Didn't win, though. When he was,
won.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
When he was working with Marilyn Monroe on The Misfits, she said that he was the only other person she knew who was in worse shape than she was.
Oh, holy shit.
Yep.
Ugh.
Now, the thing is, this is a serious song topic, but it's like the way Joe sings it cracks me up. It's kind of like he doesn't seem to be too serious about it, especially like when he loses it at the end and he's talking about, Nembutal and, alcohol, and it's like, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's so funny, by the way. When I was reading the lyrics on Google, they spelled out that noise. And it's hilarious.
Well, even on the lyric sheet that comes with the remastered CD, you get blah, blah, blah,
Spelled out.
Yeah. And it's funny
Which I like.
the way that he starts off. He's like, "Hey, where have I seen this guy? Place in the Sun, The Misfits, Red River," and goes in for that. But I love this song. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
Now, do you know why they wrote a song about this guy? Was it because they liked his movies, or they were fans, or?
Possibly could have been. Joe might have been a fan. I don't know. I don't know. It's the old, where do you get your ideas? He might have been watching one of his movies and wondering, wait a minute, why does he look different in his later movies than his early movies?
Oh, and did some, okay.
Yeah.
All right, my third and final favorite song, Lost in the Supermarket.
Why am I not surprised?
Really? You thought I was going to like this song. All right, tell me why after I read my notes. Okay, first note, wow, there's so much to unpack here. This guy is living a dull, unhappy life, and he feels nothing but numbness and pain. I think the personality he's looking for is something he saw promised on TV or like in the newspaper advertisements with the coupons at the grocery store, because it's like, ads are designed to, make you feel good. And we live in a culture where we're told buying things and materialism and buying all this crap like we see on infomercials on TV is going to make us feel better. But sometimes it makes us feel emptier, and piling stuff on top of our problems doesn't solve them. It's a really poignant message that is written about so well in this song, and the chorus is so catchy. I love this song, but I think some people would have to be careful listening to this so that they don't get pushed off the deep end. All right, how did you know I was going to like this song?
Do you think it should be played in grocery stores?
Do you think it should be played in our grocery store?
Yes, it should, at least once an hour.
All right, I think I'd laugh if I heard this played in our store.
Well,
I think it'd be great.
I had a feeling you'd like it because, it's definitely tuneful and the subject matter as well.
Yeah.
And Mike told me that The Clash got a lot of crap for this song because it was sensitive.
Ooh, it made us feel things.
Yes, exactly.
I feel vulnerable.
And we're talking about a personal feeling.
Emotions.
Now, the thing is, Mick Jones sings it, and some of it's about his growing up, but Joe is the one who wrote it, and he tried to imagine, what Mick's childhood must have been like. I mean, and the line that always gets me is, I wasn't born so much as I fell out.
Yeah, I read that line and I was like, oh no, like, is that like saying he regrets his existence or something?
And then the lines about, like, there was the hedge over, he could never see. And then, like, the neighbors upstairs always making all this noise on the ceiling. And, yeah, it seemed like he just had, like, this crappy childhood.
Yeah, but also, like, when I heard these lyrics, I'm like, it makes me think about, like, what are the differences between British advertising and American advertising? And it's like, I've seen some stuff about, like, British supermarkets versus American supermarkets from, like, Americans who have moved to England. And it's quite fascinating. Like, they have sandwich dispenser vending machines.
Huh.
It's really cool. All right.
Now we've got 11 songs left that you don't really care for.
No. All right. Clamp Down. Again, another song with a lot of nuance where there's so much to unpack. It brings up an argument that we still hear today. People say foreigners and strangers are taking their jobs, but really, the fault doesn't lie with foreigners and strangers, and people are just looking for a scapegoat because they're afraid. It makes me wonder what the social and political climate of London was like at the time that this album was being released. Not my favorite song, but still definitely fascinating subject matter that is still sadly relevant. And when he's talking about the guy with the turban, or some lyric about the guy in the turban, that makes me think how in America, Islamophobes sometimes confuse people who are Muslim with people who are sheiks. Like, that episode of The Office with the guy from tech support where Michael Scott makes that mistake, thinking that he's a Muslim, and he's like, no, I'm a sheik.
Isn't he sick?
Sick. Oh, sorry, sick or something. Yeah, I didn't know how to pronounce it. My bad. Sorry. I'm sorry. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I looked at it at this song as like for the first verse or so, it's like, first you have to learn how to get along in the system to survive.
Yeah.
And then you teach the next generation how to get along.
So almost like you've got to be carefully taught,
like
but in like a different.
Well, you've become that which you hate.
Yeah.
And so it goes. It's
political
just
socialization.
It's just this unending cycle.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed, like, how, like, the first verse is, like, barely audible before Joe shouts, "What are we going to do now?"
Yeah, I couldn't hear. I was like, what the hell is he saying? Like, I turned up the volume, but even then.
Oh, yeah, it's tough. And for years, people have been trying to figure out what they've been saying. Someone figured it out. It's on Wikipedia.
Okay.
I didn't write it down because it's kind of long. But if you want to know what he's saying, just go to Wikipedia.
You're gonna make me look it up.
I'm gonna make you press buttons.
But Dad, it's Sunday and I'm lazy.
Well, do it tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, someone figured out what he was saying, and put it on Wikipedia. So just type in "clamp down" and you'll
find it.
You'll get the translation.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. The Guns of Brixton. Fun fact: David Bowie grew up in Brixton as a kid. Just something nice to throw in there.
That was fun. Oh, and it was a fact.
Yes, it was a fact. I feel like I would have had to have grown up in that town to understand the harsh realities of that song. It feels like they're daring the police or whoever they're fighting against is it to say, you attack one of us, you attack all of us, and by God, we're coming for you. They definitely sound like they mean business, but again, I feel like you would have had to grow up in this area of London during that time in order to fully understand what they're talking about. Also, the crackling sounds at the beginning, they sound like the snaps and pops of a vinyl record, but they grew to be really uncomfortable for me as they grew louder and louder, and it just rang in my ears, and I thought, oh, please stop, this sounds like a bad ASMR video. Ugh.
Yeah, it was definitely written about these tensions that had been building up for years in Brixton, and eventually there were riots in the 1980s, so it just
Oh, I heard about
Blew
those.
up.
Like in Britain, like it was really dangerous to go in London at that time because the city was just on a knife's edge at that point.
Well, yeah, and I mean, even sidetrack, the Specials wrote a song called Ghost Town, and it was like about how like the clubs and all that were empty because there was too much fighting on the dance floor.
Eesh.
And it was like no one was out or about. It was just,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to go out, you're going to get killed.
Now they're dealing with Brexit, so still crap.
Okay, this was the first song that bassist Paul Simonon wrote, and he sings the lead. And he wasn't too sure about the lyrics, but Joe Strummer encouraged him to work on them. So you could look at Paul Simonon as the George of the group.
Yeah, every time you say Paul Simon, and I always think you're going to say Paul Simon, but then you keep going.
I know, every time I typed in Simonon into Microsoft Word, it kept underlying it as a misspelling.
Did you mean Simon? No, I did not.
Correct. Okay, while he was recording the lead vocals for the song, Simonon sang the song while staring directly at a CBS executive who dropped by the studio during the sessions.
Whoa.
And this gave Simonon the desired amount of emotion in his voice.
Cool. I respect that.
Yep.
Singing
Yep.
with the man.
I guess he needed. Yeah. Basically. Yep. And I've never. Well, at first I never liked this song, but it's a song that's grown on me over the years.
Okay.
Paul definitely has an interesting voice, and like in the photos that I've seen of the whole band, sometimes I think he's the baddest of the badasses in that group. I mean, there's so many pictures of them looking like, you know,
Thugs.
serious or thugs or whatever, angry, but he just looks like, you know, this is the guy who, if looks could kill, he would definitely be able to do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run into him in a dark alley at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
He'd kill
Right.
you. Okay. All right. Wrong 'em, boyo.
Love this song.
While this song deals with someone who's screwed with the wrong man, it's just too happy and upbeat with the accordion and the saxophone. I like the nuance and the anger of the Clash, but not when they juxtapose the subject matter with cheery music. It just jars the tone completely. Not bad, just meh.
Well, you know, a spoonful of sugar does help the medicine go down,
In the most delightful way.
as someone once said. This is another cover song. And it first starts off with Joe Strummer singing about Stagger Lee. And then it's, one of them breaks in and says, "Hey, start over," which you never hear. He goes on for the band goes on for
Yeah,
about
I was
half a
like,
minute. And then you do, 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 do. And here's the thing. When I heard the horns, after all these years, it hit me. This is just the song Sea Cruise by Frankie Ford with different words. And I hope Huey Piano Smith got credit for this. Sea Cruise came out in the late 50s, early 60s, but it's the exact same arrangement. I mean, like I said, this is a cover. The Clash didn't write it, but I'm not sure who is responsible for the musical arrangement. But you could take either song. They both sound the same, but I love the song. I just love this song. I just love the different take on the whole Stagger Lee folklore legend. And it's just a fun song. It is just a fun song.
Well, you keep Christmas in your way, and I'll keep it in mine.
But you don't keep it.
Meh.
Well, let me leave it alone then.
Let me leave it alone then.
Okay, fine.
All right. Death or Glory?
Death or Glory. I'm sorry, I just...
Now, this isn't one of my favorite songs, but it has my favorite lyric on the entire album. He who fucks nuns will later join the church. And it took all I could in this cafe to not just go, yes, at the top of my lungs, because it calls out the church's hypocrisy in their behavior. I don't have too much to say about this song other than, once again, the lyrics are poetic, but not as gritty as I'd like it to be.
Well, the thing is, like I had to read this a couple of times to get that. It's a sad song, and it's kind of like about every rocker who'd say that they died before they got old.
Oh, before their time.
But they didn't die, they got old. It's like every cheap hood strikes a bargain with the world and ends up making payments on a sofa or a girl. Mm-hmm. Love and hate tattooed across the knuckles of his hands. The hands that slap his kids around because they don't understand. Death or Glory becomes just another story.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about the nuns, it's kind of like, you know, you're trying to beat them and, you know, then you join them eventually, which is kind of like, you know, these rockers, I don't know if you could call it that they sold out or it was just realizing, oh man, the realization of I'm not going to be able to make a living doing this. I've got to find something. I mean, it's
I've got to be commercial instead of doing what I
well,
want.
not even commercial, but I just cannot make a go with this. I've got to find like, you know, a real job. I mean, there were some band. I mean, the Who. I mean, Pete Townsend was the one who wrote the lyric "Hope I Die Before I Get Old," and hey, the band got successful. And I remember once reading an interview with Pete where, people asked me, well, you wrote the lyric, Hope I Die Before I Get Old.
Are you there yet?
What if someone came up to you and said, well, what are you going to do now? And he said, well, I hope people would be too polite not to come up and ask me that question. And he really didn't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
He kind of became the thing which he thought he never would be, I guess.
Uh-oh. That a good thing or a bad thing?
Eventually became a bad thing because it was like they definitely overstayed their welcome. Because if they had broken up after Keith had died, that would have been fine.
The show at the Super Bowl wasn't that bad. I liked watching that as a kid.
Good for you, John.
Oh, you didn't like it? Just too much?
No, like I said, it's like, for me, The Who, it's Roger, Pete, Keith, and John. Once Keith was gone...
No point. I know that
exactly.
episode was pretty cool, too.
I mean, that was 1978, and there's still some permutation of them around 41 years later.
They're like the Stones, but not in the sense that they both keep going, but one definitely keeps going more than the other. Now, when did they start again?
Who?
The Who.
The Who?
Yeah.
Who?
Don't do that to me.
I want to say 61 or 62.
Oh, that would have been good. Good.
Yeah, 16-year run.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, same with the Stones. If they had broken up after Exile on Main Street in 72, or, I'll even be willing to go 1978. Would have been fine.
But they didn't. All right, back to the Clash.
Oh, yeah.
Remember them? Remember when we were talking about them? All right, Coca-Cola. This is a song that definitely calls it the hectic, dark, superficial world of advertising on Madison Avenue. The best part of this song is easily the beginning with the elevator bell dinging, going up, because you feel like you're about to go for a ride. It's a quick and effective song. This time the cheeriness works because you can tell that it's totally fake. It kind of reminds me of Christian Bale's character in American Psycho, where it's like he's smiling this too happy, too pearly white smile, but he's just dead inside. But again, not my favorite. And is there a reason they spell it with the two Ks?
Yeah, I think it's because they probably didn't want to get sued by Coca-Cola. I mean, they probably could not have gotten away with it because of probably the trademark.
Yeah, okay.
Which kind of reminded me of another band, which I think the name was called, oh my God, I want to say it was called Luna. I'm not sure, I can't remember. Oh, Dada. They came up with this song called Disneyland, and it was like, I just shot the president. Hey, I'm going to Disneyland, but they spelled it
Z?
D-I-Z space K-N-E-E space land.
That's like in the scene in The Room, Tommy Wiseau, like because they're in California, they walk past the Disney store a lot, and you can see the logo, and something tells me that Tommy Wiseau did not pay for copyright, but what he did was, there was this one of the few clever shots in The Room just to avoid a lawsuit. The way they shot it was, there was a tree blocking the sign, so it just said, "Die Me" on it.
Oh, anyway, so yeah, I think that's why it's spelled with Ks. I thought there were two things going on here in the song. One is about how people can be so susceptible to ads. I get my advice from the advertising world, treat me nice as the party girl, and my favorite line, Coke adds life when there isn't any. And the other thing is about the ad executives who came up with that life are coked out of their minds.
Yeah, probably.
And again, this is another song where at first it was just like, okay, it's okay, but it's grown on me. A lot of these songs, like in this section, have kind of grown on me because I kind of thought this was almost like I don't want to call it the wasteland, but it was like these songs at first, it was just kind of like, I thought they had a sameness about them, but then as years have gone by, I've really appreciated the individuality of each one.
Okay. All right, The Card Cheat. Oh, great, another cheery song about a serious story. For some reason, I think that this song would have been way more interesting if Bob Dylan got his hands on it, because he would have given the song the same grit as he gave Tweeter and the Monkey Man. What is also throwing this song off for me is that the piano parts sound like they were transplanted from an Elton John song. I don't think this song knows what it wants to be, and the songwriters settled on the wrong choice of having it sound happy.
Well, to me, the intro with the piano sounds like something out of Quadrophenia, and I think Pete Townshend should sue for royalties. It just has that kind of vibe about it, and then it kicks into like a whole wall of sound quality. And if Phil Spector was a free man, I'm sure he'd probably want some monies.
But he's not.
And to me, this is like the least clashiest song you'd ever expect to hear. But again, this whole album is all about breaking out of the punk confines. And also, don't try to cheat, kids, or try to take the fast, easy way out, because you can end up dead.
I mean, yeah, that's good advice.
And the thing to me that surprises me is how, I guess, moralistic for lack of a better word, as opposed to like sanctimonious. Like, you know, they're very serious about like some of these things, like, hey, try and be an honest person, try and, you know, fight the system as best you can. Don't get dead.
That would help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's another song that just grew on me.
Okay. Lovers Rock. This has to be the most comic, upbeat song about accidental pregnancy I have ever heard. And once again, the lyrics hint at all the serious precautions that people have to take when they hook up, and how there's much less risk for the man than there is for the woman because, you know, she's got to carry the thing. I found it hilarious because the song was so poppy and the rock was so light. I wouldn't say it's lovers rock because that would have more sexy substance to it. This just feels like cotton candy. Also, why is the singer hooing like an owl towards the end?
Again, I think it's just Joe doing his little
his
little asides.
Thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I think it's hilarious. And yeah, everybody knows it's a crying shame, but nobody knows the poor baby's name. So rap that rascal, kids. And
Wrap it before you tap it.
well, I think oh my god.
That was a sign in my sex ed class. The kids had to make their own like posters like advising people to put on condoms, and that was the one I remember. Wrap it before you tap it.
I can't believe my textiles were going for that kind of filth.
Hey, it made us pay attention and think about safe sex, okay? Whatever works.
Yep. And I think Lovers Rock, I think the rock is more like short for like a rock steady kind of beat, which is kind of like a version of reggae. I mean, you can take it on two levels of like, yeah, Lovers rocking and rolling.
Just goes to show that the Police weren't the first band to have reggae and rock. Looking at you, Meryl Streep, for saying that at the Kennedy Center Honors.
Yeah, so you can take it on two levels of the Lovers rocking and also the style of the song maybe as well. But again, another song, I love it. And this album has just really made me appreciate just like Joe Strummer's spontaneousness with that he just has on a lot of these songs, where he's just got like these little, it's almost like little secrets, or just like these little asides, or like he's kind of like almost in on a joke sometimes.
Okay. All right. Four Horsemen. I like how this song isn't actually about the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, but they're saying that we're going to be as cool as the Four Horsemen because we're rocking while you sat on your ass and did nothing. They're waving their coolness in your face, but I don't mind. Again, this song had the potential to be more badass, but they rein it in here when they really shouldn't. They should just rage against the machine. I think my problem with this band so far, and I realized this while I was listening to them, is that I keep expecting them to be AC/DC, but they never are. And it reminds me of that clip. We just started watching Big Mouth on Netflix, and it's the scene where Maury jumps out of the locker. He's like, rage, rage, fucking rage! And I just want them to do more of that on this album, but they don't. But I will say about this song, it's nice how the drums end this song and transition into the next.
Yeah, basically this song is about the Clash mythologizing themselves. And why the hell not? They're the Clash, for God's sakes. And the first two verses are about them being wined and dined by CVS execs, who were just kind of like, hey, what's the next album going to be about? What's going on?
Whatever we make it, man.
Yeah, the band wouldn't give the game away to them. And you had mentioned before about, oh God, I'm forgetting now. Oh my God.
What song? AC/DC?
Yeah, just about the sound. Again, like, I know you want them to be more rageful, and I think lyrically they have been through this album. But again, they just wanted to branch out. They wanted to expand their territory instead of just being boxed into just, you know, we're a punk band and that's it. You listen to that first album, that is nothing but rage, and it is so great, and it is so unbelievably catchy.
Well,
and I think they realized, hey, you know, if we want to continue and survive, we need to expand the musical palette, as it were. Because I think they probably saw what happened to the Pistols, one out there who were just one and done, and maybe a lot of other bands out there who didn't have the ability to continue beyond that first album, or even just that one song that they had. They put everything that they had into that one thing, and that was everything. That was it. They didn't have anything beyond that.
But they couldn't grow.
Thankfully, luckily, The Clash did.
Well, it makes me wonder if any of people who were fans of The Clash for their punk song heard this album and then jumped ship.
Well, because The Clash ended up doing the most unpunk thing that you could do: have a career. Seriously.
No, yeah, but you're right. You're right. Okay, I'm not down. I like the message of this song, and it's a good anthem for someone who is tackling life and fighting through the struggles. I like how it addresses that rich people feel tough with their money, but they don't know what it actually feels like to be tough, having lived through tough circumstances. Powerful lyrics, but I feel like the music, again, could be more kick-ass. If I want a fight song about not giving up, I'll put on I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty instead.
That's a lot more mellow than I'm Not Down.
But I like it.
You can like it. It's okay. It's okay, Jules. It's okay. And the thing I finally noticed.
My fragile millennial snowflake self.
You SJWs. What am I gonna do?
Hey, I'm not one of the hardcore SJWs. Okay, I believe in equality between men and women. Not that women are superior to men. Okay, thank you. Check the tapes.
Okay, there are tapes.
This is my tape.
Oh, okay. The thing that got me after listening to this song all these years is, oh my God, there's like an actual Zeppelin guitar progression, which I thought, oh my God, holy crap.
Like Led Zeppelin? Led Zeppelin?
Yeah, as opposed to Fred Zeppelin. Yes, Led Zeppelin. Which kind of stunned me. Like, yep, that kind of sounds like, you got a little Zepp thing going on there.
How come they didn't get sued for that?
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if you can get sued for licks. I mean, if you could copyright licks, Chuck Berry would have been the richest man in the history of rock and roll. But yeah, great lyric. Mick's been through a lot of crap, but he's not down. He's not giving up. And yeah, I like what you said about that last verse about, like, you can be insulated with so much money and have nothing ever happen to you, which I'm kind of okay with.
But take the money away and you're vulnerable. You've got nothing.
Yeah, are you going to be able to survive? And it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter how much money you have. This could happen to you, and what are you going to do? But I just...
Madoff.
Yeah, and I just love, like, Mick's, like can-do attitude. I'm not down. I'm going to survive this, and just...
My father's pounding his fist.
That's the fist-pounding sound. For those of you who don't have the video, which there is none, of course.
There will be none.
Okay. Next!
Revolution Rock. Okay, if a song is over 5 minutes, it needs to be good enough to have your attention all the way through, right?
Right.
Well, it doesn't work. I can't figure out if they're making fun of rock that claims to be revolutionary, or if they're talking about how their own brand of rock was revolutionary in the beginning. Because this music doesn't feel revolutionary to me. I'm sure it was considered so in the 1970s, but this sounds like the Police to me. It's not hardcore at all. I feel like if it was true punk sound, then there would definitely be a sign that, yes, change is in the air and something is coming that will blow the legacy of the Beatles and the Stones away. However, this song isn't it. It's too gentle and it doesn't rock my world.
Well, this is another cover song. And again, by another reggae band. And the thing about reggae is when they use the word rock, like, again, they're more referring to, like, the rock steady beat, which is kind of like... It's kind of like what's going on in the song. And I have to admit, this is the one song on here I'm not really crazy about. It is too long, and it's kind of rambling towards the end. And it's almost kind of like foreshadowing what Sandinista was going to be about, which was a 3-record set. And some of the songs on that one kind of go on a little too long. But it's an okay song, not my favorite song. And when the album first came out, though, everyone looked at the back of the album cover and, oh my God, this is the last song on the set. But it wasn't.
No.
It was not.
The last song is Trained in Vain. The lyrics of this song I can definitely relate to, and I feel like everybody can relate to this at some point in their lives where somebody is trying to understand where you're coming from, but you just say, listen, this is why I'm like this. and you don't understand. You're not in my brain. You don't understand why I do what I do or why I am the way I am. It's an okay song, but the one thing I don't get is, why did they title the song Train in Vain and not Did You Stand By Me? It's like the song from Fleetwood Mac that should have been called The Face of a Pretty Girl, but it's called Isn't It Midnight? There's probably a reason for it I'm sure you're going to explain to me.
Oh, yes.
It's an okay song, but I don't think I'd want this song to be the one that closed the album. Maybe Four Horsemen would have been a good closer instead.
Well, the thing was, like, they had recorded the song and they had planned on releasing it as a flexi disc in some magazine, and they just decided, you know what, let's just put it on the album. Now, originally it was not listed on the back of the album cover or even on the lyric sheet. And
why?
When they did the remaster, I thought, okay, maybe they'll put it on the lyric sheet. Nope, they just left the lyric sheet as was. And the thing is, like, supposedly everything was printed up, the album was ready to go, and they just decided to add it at the last minute. And so, of course, that became the hit. And the thing is, though, there's also another school of thought that the Clash realized that this was the hit, and they really didn't want to promote it. Because I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. How could you have all this stuff to go and then just decide at the last minute, yeah, I'm going to put this other song on?
It's like the really good item on the secret menu at like a fast food restaurant that you have to ask for in person. You won't find it on the menu, but people say it's one of the best things that they serve there. Okay,
now, as for the title, it's been interpreted to be about Mick Jones's volatile relationship with Viv Albertine.
Who's that?
She was in this band called The Slits.
Like, as in wrists?
No.
Okay.
As in a female body part.
Ah, okay, yep, continue.
Yep. Okay, now Viv says that she was really proud to have inspired the song, but Mick won't admit to it. He used to get on a train to my place in Shepherd's Bush, and I would not let him in.
Slitting bush.
My own daughter.
Where do you think I got it from?
Yeah, probably your mother.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hi, dear.
Don't listen to this.
He used to get on the train to my place in Shepherd's Bush, and I would not let him in. He was bleeding on the doors. He was bleating on the doorstep. Yeah, let me in. Yeah.
Let me in.
And she says that was cruel to, like, not let him in. But, you know, we got a great song out of it. The Clash got their first hit, and, you know, this also has one of the most unforgettable drum patterns ever. It's been very...
I think I remember the drums a little bit.
It's... It's been used for a lot of different things. Garbage used it for their song Stupid Girl, and Strummer and Jones got the songwriting credit. And the thing is, when Garbage put it out again on their greatest hits, they gave all four band members credit for the song, which I can kind of see because that's Topper Hedden on the drums, and I'm sure he was probably the one who came up with the pattern, or the lick, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And that is basically Train in Vain, and I just want to say I'm glad that you made the mistake that you did, saying that we should do this album, because I have to admit I had not listened to this album in a long time, so it was like listening to it for the first time with new ears, and I was realizing, oh my God, this is like one of the greatest albums ever. And to me, it's their second greatest album, because that debut is just so untouchable. And I forgot, like, how much I missed this album. Now I'm in love with this album. And I look at it as Punk's White Album. I do. And I did some thinking, and it's going to be that Joe Strummer was John, Mick Jones was Paul Simonon was George, and of course either Nicky Hedden or Terry Chimes was the Ringo of the group. Because actually Terry Chimes did write one song. I want to say it's on Sandinista. I can't remember which one it is, and I know he sang on it, and I feel embarrassed for not remembering it. But anyway,
I'll correct you.
I'm sure he will. So that's the parallel, and like I said, this is their White Album, and love this album. Love it, love it, love it.
Well, sorry to rain on your parade now.
Okay, go ahead. You just rain. I'm just gonna get out. I'm just gonna get out a metaphorical umbrella.
Okay, so for me, when it comes to the Clash, their lyrics are poetic and they have a lot of nuance. They make you think and have you learn about new topics and ideas, which I like. But for me, what makes the songs fail on this album is that the instrumentation clashes with the subject matter. Again, I feel like for a punk band, they don't have that much grit, but I think I figured out another reason why. Maybe that's because I'm used to punk bands or punk rock bands like Green Day that are more hardcore and aren't afraid to hold back. What? What? What, Dad?
Green Day. I love Green Day, but they're
No, you don't.
I have the best of, which has like all the greatest hits I'd ever want or need by them. They're more like punk pop. They're more like diluted punk. Like, for me, punk is like, it's going to be like, you know, the Ramones and the New York Dolls and Iggy and the Stooges. You need to go back to the stuff that came out in 77, and you really should listen to the Clash's first album, because that is just...
Again, well, I think that I'm going to like the Clash's first album, or maybe the Essential Clash when we get to review that album, because, you know, it'll have more punk stuff on it that I like. However, if this music was revolutionary in the 1970s, then I'm very surprised. Overall, the Clash succeed when they have angry instruments that complement their angry lyrics. But if I want a band that's more consistent in that vein, I'll just put on some AC/DC.
Well, see, the thing is, like, AC/DC is more heavy metal.
I know, it's more heavy metal.
And where punk was, like, more... see, the thing about punk is it was more like... I guess like an attitude of how music should be put across. Yeah. It was more of like, let's go back to the 50s where, you know, people banging songs out in 2.5 minutes and saying what they had to say. They got in, they got out, that was it. And they were doing it very fast and very loud and just trying to bring that rebel spirit back to rock and roll. And I can kind of see your point of like, well, it doesn't sound very punk to me because again, for the umpteenth time, they're moving away from it, and that's why they didn't want you in the studio when they were doing their rehearsals.
They would have hated me.
Of course, you were like negative 20-something years old, and you know weren't even around. But yeah, I mean, they definitely had the spirit in the lyrics and in the vocal delivery, and they just wanted to, again. I feel like I'm just like repeating myself. You know, I feel like I'm repeating myself. They just wanted to expand. They just wanted to try new things that were out there. They just wanted to grow. They just wanted to grow musically and lyrically and mature and progress instead of just being like on square one.
No, I know, but not everyone's gonna like that. Some people.
Oh no, a lot of people didn't. It was just like, oh man, I can't believe. Like I said, I can't believe these guys have a career. I can't believe they sound like this. They've betrayed me, and those were probably the people that they didn't want coming along with them, because it was like, no, you're not going to hold us back. You want to come along, fine. You don't, fine. But we're moving on.
Well, in that sense, good for them.
Yeah.
All right, as always, thank you for listening to another installment of My Dad Listens to This. I just wanted to like make a quick announcement on here. So we've done like a lot of British bands, but because 4th of July is coming up, we're gonna do an American band. I'll make sure of it. We'll have something like a good American classic for the next episode. Don't know if it'll be released. It'll probably be released after 4th of July, but I thought, hey, why not?
It's not going to be the Hamilton soundtrack.
No, we're not going to do Hamilton. We're seeing Hamilton, but we're not going to cover Hamilton. That's way too long. All right, but as always, thank you for listening to another episode of My Dad Listens to This. If you like this video, then hit that like button. If you want to know when we upload more stuff, please press the subscribe button or tap the bell. That way you can know when we upload every episode. And if you follow me on Facebook, I post the episodes every week, so definitely check them out there.
Every week or every other week?
Whenever we upload.
It's been about once every other week now.
Been about once every other week, yeah.
Seems to be a more better schedule to handle. Yeah. We're just kind of busy. But again...
We have lives.
Oh!
Well,
okay.
No, we're just busy and we have other commitments, but we really love doing this, so we'll be uploading more, don't worry.
Hey, one of us has to catch up on BoJack Horseman. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Netflix addict.
Have a happy 4th of July, and for you British listeners out there, have a happy Thursday. Thank you, and good night.
Bye, everyone.